Good evening, everyone. It's July 11th, 2023, and the time is now 6:03 p.m. I now call this meeting of the Urban Design Commission to order. Pursuant to Chapter 2 of the Acts of 2023, this meeting of the Urban Design Commission is conducted via remote participation. We will make recordings available upon request as soon as possible after the meeting. My name is Courtney Kirk, acting co-chair for tonight's meeting. I will start with a roll call of the commission members present. I'm not doing a very good job today with my words. Frank Valdez. Frank, can you hear me? Well, Frank is here. I don't think he can hear me, maybe. Andrew Arbaugh, absent. Tim Talon.
Present.
Deborah Fennick, absent. Sherry Ruane.
Present.
Oh, you made it under the 5-minute wire.
I did. I just skid in on 2 wheels.
Yay. Awesome. Okay. And then Tim Hood.
Present.
And then just double checking. Frank, can you hear us?
This is Andrew Graminski. Technicality, Sherry, the reason your name's appearing as my name is because I forwarded you the link that I had. To change your name, you should be able to double click the name and then put your name in where you appear. Sorry for the interruption, Courtney. Please continue.
Okay, we're just double checking that Frank can hear us. Yes?
I can hear you now. Sorry.
Okay. All right, good. So now we have a verbal and visual. Great. All right. So our first order of business is the approval of the April 25th, 2023 meeting minutes. Commissioners, do
I move to approve.
All right. Do I have a second? Seconded by Sherry Ruane. I will try not to call you Andrew Graminski.
I'll try to change it. It's not intuitive, but I'll try to figure it out.
The motion has been made to approve the minutes from April 25th, 2023. Roll call vote. Frank Valdez.
Yes.
Tim Talon.
Yes.
Sherry Ruane.
Yes.
Tim Hood.
Yes.
All right, the meeting minutes from April 25th, 2023 have been approved. Our next item on the agenda is the design review for 142 Cross Street, which was continued from the June 27th, 2023 meeting. Andrew Graminski, if you could make those meeting presenters active to give their presentation tonight, please.
Absolutely. This is Andrew Graminski. If you are presenting tonight, can you please use the raise hand feature? Thank you so much. All right, Evan, I'm making you presenter. And Katya, I'm upgrading you as well. All right, you should be all set. Just a reminder that you have 20 minutes to present.
Hi, everybody.
Thank you. Evan, good.
Can everybody see my screen?
Yes, if it's a 3D model looking,
The wrong screen.
if you're showing us Revit or something like that.
How about
Yeah,
now?
we see the PDF now.
Okay, that's better. So we are back in front of you to look at some additional themes of 142 Cross Street tonight. Just to reorient you with the project. Cross Street is along the bottom of this page here. Alston Street is on the right side. We're proposing a structure that comes up to the 12-foot curb setback on both Cross Street and Alston Street. Cross Street, we are proposing a 10-foot proposed curb cut, which leads to 2 parking spaces. The primary entry to the building is right adjacent to that, so that goes up to the 3 units. And then there's an additional entry to Unit 1 off of Alston Street. At this point, I think I'm going to hand it over to Katya from Verdant to review the landscape plan.
Thanks very much, Evan. So as you can see here, we are adding a street tree on Cross Street. That's sort of the biggest move we're making, that we're able to make on this small plot and small streetscape area. And we're able to do that because Evan has moved his building, you know, the 12-foot setback for the building facades enable us to have a 6-foot concrete sidewalk, largely within our property. And then that 6-foot zone furnishing zone for that street tree, which will also accommodate a bike rack for visitor bike parking. In addition to that new street tree, we're showing some green plantings at the rear entry to Unit 1 that you can see to the top of the site. One of the darker green small tree is on the next page. You can see it a little more clearly, the slender silhouette sweet gum, and the street tree that we're proposing on Cross Street would be a disease-resistant variety of American elm, which is called Homestead elm. It has a single leader instead of the typical vase shape. It has a strong central leader, so it's sort of preferred for that in that regard. And then permeable pavers, you can see the sort of light purplish grayish zones around the building. And out of the furnishing zone are unit pavers. And on the next page, there is some more imagery showing the style. We're choosing either an Eco Prioria product from Unilock or maybe a promenade plank, both permeable in style or something similar. So basically like an 8x4 whatever permeable paper with a full depth, 25 inches or more of the drainage aggregate below those pavers.
Excuse me,
bike rack. Yeah.
Just for the record, Commissioner Andrew Arbaugh has joined the meeting. I would just like to acknowledge that he was not present during the June 27th presentation for this case and will be unable to vote on this project.
Real quick, this is Andrew Graminsky speaking. Andrew Arbaugh, did you provide, I know I provided you with a form, were you able to sign it?
I did watch the meeting. I haven't signed the form yet, so I can go dig that up if you want me to, but it looks like we have enough people as well.
We do, but if you get that to me like now, you can participate.
Yeah, let me go find it again.
Thanks, Courtney. Sorry for the interruption. Please continue.
Not at all. I will add that we were hopeful in trying to add another tree on the Alston Street frontage, but it turns out there are a number of utilities along that sort of short frontage. There's, you know, a crosswalk, ADA sidewalk ramp, some utility poles and street lights, and then a utility cover, which made us think, okay, there's really not going to be room over here. Plus, the path of travel wouldn't link up correctly to the next streetscape over. So there wouldn't be ADA access onto the concrete sidewalk at that adjacent property. So we're also limited at this on Cross Street with how many trees we thought we could place out along this edge, because there's a fire hydrant on one side, and then at the intersection there, we didn't think it was safe to plant a tree too closely to the intersection. Another note on the plan here, we have a bike rack specifically for the unit residents here on site, located at the, I don't know if you could point to it for me, Evan, sort of the northeast corner as the page is oriented, although it's actually the south corner. And there's a little area well planted with ferns next to that. And then further on, I had mentioned that sweet gum tree that's very narrow in its habit. So it fits in that little plant bed there, and an underplanting around that of Hyconocloa, I believe. And then on the streetscape, in addition to that elm, we're planting some catmint in that tree well, which, you know, are super hardy for that kind of environment. Very tough plants. So next page, we can move on to some other images that we might be showing here. Oh, okay, we're moving up to the roof level. And here we're proposing a minimum 6-inch tray system, a green grid 2x2 modular tray system to accommodate like a pre-vegetated green roof up here, which surrounds a very small deck that's right off the head house there. You can see a little 7-foot by 10-foot sized wood deck that also has a little railing around it, so people can come up and, you know, pop a chair. Maybe they could, if they're into sunbathing or something like that, they could come up here and enjoy a little bit of fresh air and the green surrounds. If you go to the next page, you can see we calculated the green score accordingly with the vegetated green roof. I think it's 920 square feet. I can't quite see it on my screen here, but I think it's 920 square feet contributes to that green score, as well as the small tree, which is that slender silhouette sweet gum, and the permeable pavers that are along that top edge of our site. Several, you know, one portion of which is actually where our parking spaces are. So where the cars kind of butt out and reappear on the other side of the garage space where they're not enclosed, that's actually open to the sky, and that would be permeable paving. I think that's all I have. There might be a few more details that describe how our permeable pavers and a spray irrigation system up on the roof deck and the permeable pavers on grade, et cetera, are going to be designed and installed, as well as specifications. Thank you.
Okay, so I'll jump into the facade schemes. This is our first facade scheme. It is a repeat from what you've seen before. So this one, we broke the facade along Cross Street up and tried to play with the building across the street here with a more Tetris-y feeling. This uses a mixture of hardy panels, a cast stone water table, a simulated cedar panel, and some standing seam metal. This scheme wraps the corner of Cross and Austin Street with hardy panels, and then around the backside, the hardy panels wrap around the upper floor, and we introduce a hardy siding at the rear. And this is just the 3D massing views of that scheme. The second scheme that we're presenting, this one is new for you. We broke the massing up along Cross Street right here. To the left of that, it reads as a 3-story structure with some large exposure cementitious siding. And between the windows, we use a smaller exposure cementitious siding with a darker color. To the right of that, we introduced cementitious cladding with reglets on the ground floor. And then the upper 2 floors is just the inverse of the massing to the left. That wraps the corner of Cross and Austin, and then it wraps around to the back of the building as well. And then this is what that would look like in 3D massing views. The third scheme is also one that we had presented to you previously. We broke the massing up into 4 separate pieces along Cross Street. We introduced a simulated cedar panel that extends from the ground floor up to the head house at the roof deck, and then introduced large exposure cementitious siding that wraps the corner along Austin Street and continued that geometry around the rear of the structure and then along the railway side as well. And then again, these are the 3D massing views of that scheme. And the fourth and final scheme that we have for you tonight, again, we broke the massing up along Cross Street into 2 separate massings. We have a traditional mansard on the right, which wraps the corner, and then the massing to the left is a more contemporary 3-story massing, which introduces a smaller exposure cementitious cladding, some cementitious panels with reglets, and then those geometries wrap around to the rear and also around to the railroad side. And then this is just what that looks like in 3D views as well. And those are the schemes that we have to present to you tonight. Happy to answer any questions or comments that you have.
Thank you. Commissioners, do you have any questions? And I will just acknowledge for the record that we have received affidavits from Sherry Ruane and Andrew Arbaugh that they have watched the previous recording of this project and are able to vote on this project and participate. Thank you. Any questions?
I have a question. Along the north facade, that's the main residential entry?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, I'm just trying to match up the elevations with the plan. And then along that route, it looks like, is it a brick paver or a previous paver there?
On the north side of the building, which is sort of the bottom of the page here, the main entry of the building is accessed via a concrete public sidewalk on Cross Street.
Okay, so the only pervious, well, there's a note at the top. It says pervious unit paving on the top left.
That's the south side of the building, and that accesses a single the first floor unit. And those are all permeable pavers. Yes, those are.
Okay.
Yes. In that like light purplish grayish color.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. Thank you.
Can you go back to the 4 options for a quick second? Image. And Andrew G, can I ask, is there a particular reason? Is there something in the code that dictates that the length of this building because of where it's located has to be broken down into 2 types of massings?
So there is a requirement for a building that has a width over 100 feet in the MR district. I'm just going to check the MR3 if that standard applies here, which it does. So yeah, the facade of any principal building greater than 100 feet in width must be divided vertically and designed as 2 or more separate and distinct facades.
We're at 66 feet, so it's not a requirement here. It's just when we were designing this, it looked very big and massive. And it's difficult to break up that facade because we can't protrude out with bays because we're at that curb setback. So that was a design decision rather than a code requirement.
So you're not required, Evan, to comply with that. So that's the part that I'm having a hard time with. I think that maybe from a scales perspective, I think that there's a lot of things happening at a really small scale. I would definitely eliminate option 4. I think that the historicism of trying to recreate a mansard roof really is just something that I wouldn't recommend, I think, in this scenario. But I'm trying to understand all the pieces together, and it just seems to be initially, from my perception, like 3 very broken or 2 very broken pieces. And I think that the building would probably, I don't know, I never saw an image of like the design as a whole and not broken up into different pieces, what that aesthetic would look like.
Okay.
But if I were to say anything, I think that at this point, what comes even closest to perhaps a reasonable facade or is option 1 that I would talk about. And I think that one of the things that as well that is missing from all of them is really an emphasis a stronger emphasis as to where the residential entrance is, whether it is done through some type of a canopy or something that just, there's no really indication of where this arrival point is. It just it's not clear on it. And I think that maybe that would add a little bit more to the reading of the massing and to the design if there was a little bit more of a depiction as to where that entrance is. But I'm having a hard time understanding some of the options with like the variations as well, and I don't think that they're very successful.
Right, can you clarify which one you're referring to by number 1?
The upper, yeah, the one that's, yeah, that the one that is, I think it's the one that comes closest to perhaps maybe something cohesive and that beginning to make sense. And I think that some articulation would probably help it work. I think that there's an emphasis on the corner, and I like the idea that there perhaps is a designation as to the strong corner. Maybe it needs a little bit more emphasis on it. But option 2, which would be the upper right, and the option 3, which would be lower left, they seem just a little bit discombobulated and not really taking advantage of the fact that it is a corner building. There should be an emphasis on the fact that it is a predominant corner, an entry into a neighborhood, an area, as well from an urban perspective.
Yeah, I think that's a really good observation. That feels like a bit of a missed opportunity on that corner. I had a very similar reaction as you. And I think I recall we talked about this the last time we reviewed this project, and that it's a very small building. It's 3 units. It's just 1 unit of floor. This can and probably should be a pretty cohesive single building. For me, actually, it's the upper right that feels a little more cohesive than the upper left. I don't know if it's just because it's a simpler material palette, or those same materials are carrying through both, we'll call on both sides of the horizontal or the big vertical division, that kind of white pier. But that feels the most cohesive. But I think that corner, just taking the same window module and carrying it around the corner is what's perhaps the missed opportunity there. There is a different window type above the residential entry. So it's not like that's the only window size on the building. But yeah, if there were to be, perhaps it's a larger window on that corner or something else at the corner that emphasizes that unique condition.
And is there a retail requirement on the ground floor?
There's not.
There is not, okay. And it is 3 units or 2 units?
3.
3 units, right, yeah.
I would probably lean towards designs that are more simple, given the scale of the building, and it's a strange geometry. It's a triangle on a corner site. So I was leaning towards the top right image. I thought just in terms of minimizing the amount of moves and just kind of like a little bit more simpler design gestures, I thought that one was a little bit more successful than the others. I see that you did try to celebrate the entrance on that scheme by bringing the white, I think that's the fiber cement down down to the ground next to the vehicle entry and the main entry of the building. I don't necessarily think a major move at the corner is needed here, just because it's such a tiny corner, but I do see the value in making the windows bigger or having like a corner window. I think that would be not only a nice unit, but it just like a nice way to celebrate that corner. This project is next to the bridge, so that 3-story white expression, it's kind of like a terminus of the residential expression as it kind of wraps the corner. So I didn't really mind that here that the corner wasn't super expressive. The bottom left is more expressive at the corner, and so is the top left. But I would say I'm more partial to the top right. And in terms of bringing the white banding across the spandrel between floors 2 and 3, it looks like you're trying to bring materials from the entry area across the rest of the building. I'm not necessarily that sure that that's needed here. It looks like the fibers cement of that area is brought over to the white area as well. So I'm not certain that the white spandrel is needed to be expressed there.
Hey, Evan, a quick question for you. The curb cut that you're asking, have you gotten approval for that curb cut, or have you had any discussions about it yet? Because you are making a right turn into the building on that curb cut, and it's basically the sidewalk that gets you into the bridge right before you get on the bridge.
It has not been reviewed by engineering yet. So no.
Would there ever be a possibility that they say no because of the fact that it is a pedestrian bridge right before it, and that they would reject it?
I suppose so, yeah.
Just as a question, is like that discussion hasn't happened, and that would not be allowed, it would dramatically change the design of this.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yes.
I would make a suggestion that I think that conversation needs to be had, that if you're basing a lot of a huge emphasis on the circulation and entry of your building on this new curb cut, that it's right before the bridge, that it's a pedestrian bridge, that you should have at least some blessing.
Yep.
That they would approve that, because that would definitely have an impact in the approach of your design.
Mm-hmm.
And I would like to hear what civil and engineering has to say on that.
Okay, we'll have that conversation.
Yeah, I think it's to your benefit to just find that out.
Mm-hmm.
Tim Hood, that's a good point on the spandrel, the white spandrel. It feels more prominent than it should. It just feels very bright. And perhaps if that was the same material, I'll call it the brown material, as the rest of the facade, it would help there be just a clearer, simpler base and upper portion of the building. And then on the corner, maybe it's simple, it doesn't have to be something dramatic, but just as simple as pulling the two windows together and getting rid of the pier in between them, doing a wider window there. And then if it's that proportion, developing your detailing based on that to make the corner unique. I will say that it does feel weird to me on that scheme, and I think we're seeing your Revit screen in front of part of the window, so I can't really.
I'm sorry, I was trying to show you what that would look like as you were talking.
Okay. Yeah, that feels. It's starting to feel better to me. Pairing those together. I'd say on the, I think it's the north-facing facade. Yeah, that side. For the westerly portion of the building, the brown portion, I think the spacing between the outside corner, the edge of the window and the outside corner, and then the vertical white piece that comes down to the ground and that window, it feels like there's a centering that needs to be done there too, just in the composite of the elevation.
Sure.
Yeah. think to the point about the curb cut, regardless of whether, it'll be important to just make sure sight lines are addressed there. And the two options on the left, the way that building comes to the ground feels, it feels unresolved. You have a pier on one side coming to the ground, and then it's just the kind of the thin width of the wall coming out to the sidewalk there. So it feels like either it wants to be a columnar expression coming down to the ground there, and then maybe on the commuter rail facing side, you're really opening up that wall so that there's sight lines through to folks coming over the bridge. Or you're really pulling back on that corner and just bringing down a column, really opening it up to expose the sight lines.
Mm-hmm.
I had two more comments and then I'll shut up. I apologize. Evan, one thing that I noticed is that there is a fire hydrant right in front of the building. And I think that you should consider the location of that fire hydrant and in its association with, in the association with your residential entry, with your entry to the parking, and how not only does engineering feel about it, but also how does the fire department feel about it? It just seems to be that there's a lot of activity happening in there. And then the second comment that I was going to say is, Katya, you did mention the idea that people would have access to the roof if they wanted to.
There is a deck up top, yes.
There is a deck up top, and my ignorance eludes me here, but you're not required to have an elevator, correct, in this building?
That's correct.
That's right.
And it would be kosher to say that someone who wanted to access the deck and was not able to could not access the deck.
The deck is only accessible through the third floor unit.
Only for the third floor. Okay. All right. Emphasize that then. I think that's important to understand that it's only independent for the third floor on that.
That's a good point.
Sherry, Andrew, do you have any comments?
I don't really have any major comments on the landscape. I think, again, sort of based on the amount of space that we have, it's fine.
Yeah, same.
Can you go to drawing A101? So for the vehicle entering the building, there is the corner of the building. I think that is what material do you have there at grade, and what do you have there at the corner that's meeting at the corner? Is that fiber cement at a certain elevation, and what elevation is that?
So it's a cast stone up 2 feet and then fiber cement past that.
Okay. I was, corners with fiber cement are tricky. Also, depending if you're using a medium or high density board, I'm not sure what product you'll be using here, but the corners are treated differently with different products. I'm just wondering what that corner is going to look like. It's you'd be walking across the bridge. Is that going to get beat up? Is that going to be protected? Does that want to be something sturdy, or does that corner want to be eased a bit? I think for pedestrians, that's crossing the bridge and kind of trying to encounter the cars and seeing that corner. I just wouldn't want to see something that's kind of could potentially get damage or might, over time, or the corner with fiber cement. It's tricky. So I'd pay attention to the corner, and maybe it can be eased off a bit. My other question is this drawing on the top of the page, it notes an areaway, and then it notes outdoor amenity space. And on the landscape drawings, it notes landscaping here, I think. Is that correct? Is this intended to be landscaping out here, or is this going to be kind of like an areaway with a grate or something?
So it's intended to be landscaping. That's something that we'll correct. So the areaway is sunk in, and there's landscaping in the areaway for. So there's landscaping outside of these bedroom windows, and then up at the ground floor level, there's going to be the tree there.
Sorry, so you're showing bedroom windows at the top side of that plan in the basement.
Yep.
But when I look at the landscape drawings, it looks like there's vegetation across that whole zone.
Wait, let me clarify. That's a depressed area well, so the plantings would be down at the level below the sill, minus 8 inches.
Okay, so this is at the bottom of the areaway.
Yes.
Commissioners, I'm letting you know you've been discussing this for 20 minutes.
Thank you.
Would you all like to make any motions?
I mean, I would say there's a lot of comments that have been made and a lot of discoveries that need to be, and a lot of questions that need to be answered. I don't think I would feel, and again, I go to my colleagues, but I don't think I would feel right to vote on this yet.
I had just one more question before we take up the issue of voting, and this is the right slide for it. Is there kind of a streetscape standard that's dictating the width of the tree pit and the planting zone here between the curb? And I wonder, is there the flexibility to consider perhaps a narrower tree pit here and planting up against the face of the building? So just shifting that 6-foot pedestrian zone closer to the curb as a buffer between the residential windows and the pedestrian zone?
Yeah, and Courtney could speak a lot more clearly to that than I could, but we're trying to follow the guidelines set forth in the new zoning for thoroughfares and sidewalk streetscapes that want to have a 6x6 minimum tree well is the preference. So that sort of dictates that 6-foot wide furnishing zone. And because we're trying to also provide for visitor bike parking in that zone, you need a certain space to be able to park 2 bikes on 1 rack, and that space accommodates that. We have been developing other projects in Somerville where the furnishing zone is not quite as wide and the tree well gets longer. So maybe like 3 by whatever it is, 3 by 8 or 4 by 10 or whatever to get minimum 36 square feet for the tree well. And thus the furnishing zone is more narrow and the sidewalk becomes wider, but very few options incorporate planting on the other side of things that you're suggesting, or like unless there's more setback of the building. And in this case, obviously, there's not enough room to do that.
Right.
Commissioners, would you be open to, it sounded like more of you were leaning towards, I'm going to call it option 2, that you give some guidance around perhaps that option, incorporating some of your feedback and returning?
I'd be comfortable for the voting to recommend the upper right for further development.
I would
Is that a
second
no?
that.
Is that
Comfortable as well. Yeah.
an official
Fine.
motion?
I think so.
Sure.
You can make it into an official motion, Tim.
So is that, just for the record, is that facade option 2? Is that how it's labeled in the presentation?
Let me double check. Yeah, scheme 2.
Okay. So I recommend scheme 2 for the preferred facade option.
Do I hear a second to motion to vote
I
on
second.
scheme 2? All right, seconded by Frank Valdez. Roll call vote. Frank Valdez,
Yes.
Andrew Arbaugh,
Yes.
Tim Talon,
Yes.
Sherry Ruane,
Yes.
Tim Hood.
Yes.
All right, so scheme 2 is the preferred option. Let's see here. Andrew Grominski, so that meets the facade vote, correct?
Correct. The last 2 votes would be if the design guidelines have been met, if the commission would like to take a vote to incorporate any additional design guidance.
Yeah, so on this, I'm a little torn. I think on the one hand, I agree with Frank. There's a number of items that the commission has discussed that would be nice to see incorporated in updated elevations. I think particularly given that there have been projects where we have made comments and kind of expected to see them incorporated and voted to move a project down based on that, and they have not been incorporated, projects that this firm has done. But on the other hand, I recognize that it was quite a while ago that this project was first before us, and that this has been, I know there's been issues with quorum and other things that have prevented this from moving through. So it's been already before the UDC for quite a while.
Frank, if you're trying to talk, I can't hear you.
No, I'm directing family issues as we speak.
Okay. I always get nervous when I see the mouth moving and then, so just double checking. All right, so commissioners, I'll give you a summary of what I've heard this evening. Perhaps that's the additional guidance that you would like to vote on for this project to incorporate. So it sounds like there's a consensus around the project trying to simplify the design since it's such a small building, and except for the corner, and perhaps if the windows could be a different option or the 2 windows pulled together there.
Courtney, in the conversation that the curb cut would be allowed, I think it would be important to know that.
Yes. So I also have some concerns raised by the commissioners around the curb cut and needing the city to weigh in a little more about that. I would also say that ties directly into Commissioner Hood's comments about the parking approach. I think that's something that the mobility division would also be interested in trying to understand a little bit more, especially a pull in and then backing out onto Cross Street as the vehicle movement. And just how that things are close to the fire hydrant, all that good stuff in the streetscape. There seems to be some concern about how the materials are terminating at the ground. and I think specifically sort of the rear, I'm going to call it the white part of the facade. Is that, Tim Talon, you had some comments about, was that more in the location that you were talking about the materials needing more resolution?
Yeah, I think it's that corner closest to the bridge, which I think is the northeast corner. It's an acute corner, the corner of the garage entry, both architecturally and then to address sight lines. But I think it's a bigger issue around this whole building, and that was something I raised at the last meeting as well, is just understanding. I think it's important to understand at a larger scale how this building is going to meet the ground.
And I think there was some discussion around the white banding at the spandrel, and that perhaps that's just complicating the design. I think that's covers most of it. Commissioners, do you agree?
I think that covers it.
Yes.
Okay. Do I have a motion for this applicant to incorporate the design feedback into scheme 2?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Seconded.
Seconded by Andrew Arbaugh. All right. Roll call vote. Frank Valdez,
Yes.
Andrew Arbaugh,
Yes.
Tim Talon,
Yes.
Sherry Ruane,
Yes.
Tim Hood.
Yes.
All right. So this applicant will incorporate the design feedback given this evening from the commissioners. And I think the last item is if you all would like to continue this project to a future meeting, or the last vote that is still outstanding is if the project has met the design guidelines.
Move to continue.
Second.
All right. Motion to continue 142 Cross Street to the next available or next meeting that they're able to incorporate the design feedback and come back. It was motioned by Andrew, right? And seconded by Sherry? Great.
I
All
think
right.
Frank, actually.
Oh,
but
Frank. Okay. Getting my records straight here.
I always get them confused.
Roll call votes. Frank Valdez,
Yes.
Andrew Arbaugh,
Yes.
Tim Talon,
Yes.
Sherry Ruane,
yes.
Tim Hood.
Yes.
Great. 142 Cross Street has been continued. Thank you, design presenters.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
And there's no other business for this evening. So do I have a motion to end the meeting?
A motion to end.
Second.
All right. Motioned by Frank, seconded by Sherry Ruane. Frank, or roll call vote. Frank Valdez,
Yes.
Tim Talon,
Yes.
Andrew Arbaugh,
Yes.
Sherry Ruane,
Yes.
Tim Hood.
Yes.
All right, this meeting of the Urban Design Commission has come to a close. Thank
Good night,
you.
everyone.
Thank you.
Adios.
Good night. Enjoy the sunshine.